If you're lucky enough to be able to regularly ride a bike park, and I'm specifically talking gravity bike parks, think places like Whistler, Morzine or W Bike Park, places with gravity trails and some sort of uplift, be it ski lift or truck, well, then you have the option of riding a proper gravity bike like the downhill bike. But no doubt you've seen the growing numbers of e-bikes at bike parks as well. So which bike is the best? Let's dig into it. I'm not in Whistler Bike Park today, although I am in somewhere slightly more sheepy. This is Caersws Bike Park in mid-Wales. This is a downhill race venue with an uplift service as well. And it's a perfect place to try these two out, give them a score and try and find out what I think is the best bike for a bike park. Downhill bikes are amazing bits of kit. If you want to ride fast, hit big jumps and race downhill, then they're the dream machine. There's nothing better than riding a downhill bike at its limit. But the limiting factor to a downhill bike is getting the bike back to the top of the hill. Pedaling them is a non-starter, pushing them is a drag, so you really need access to uplifts. In this part of the UK, mid-Wales, you've got 3 or 4 uplift venues within an hour or so around here, so you've got good access to be able to ride these bikes. When I lived around here and raced downhill, we also had a few secret tracks with their own tarmac uplift as well, where you could drive your own van, get a bunch of mates, jump in the van, take it in turns and do your own uplift. But it's all about access to proper tracks to get the most from a downhill bike. Right, earlier I said that riding a downhill bike at its limit is amazing, and it is, but you'll find actually on a downhill bike, that limit is actually having to go pretty fast, because the amount of grip you've got with the suspension and the brakes, when it's dry and fast like this, you're going really, really fast. I've ridden this bike quite a bit, but probably not still enough. It's one of these things you need to ride them a lot and even race them so you get a hang of where that limit is. Because at the moment, I'm kind of guessing a bit and sometimes I'm going a bit too quick and that brings a lot of consequences. So to get the most out of these, you've got to be confident, brave, good. Otherwise, you're riding well within its limits most of the time. I mean, I've done videos in the past where I've raced a downhill bike versus an enduro bike on a downhill track, and I've been faster on the enduro bike. And I find that tells you more about me than the bike. Like, I'm not good enough to ride this bike as fast as it could go. Or maybe I don't ride it enough is what I probably should say, but I love it. When you're drifting this thing and then you feel like you're going as fast as you can, this feels like the best bike you could be on. This is my Nuke-proof Descent carbon downhill bike with the latest and greatest kit on it as well. I've got that brand new Boxer up front with the 38 stanchions, the new Vivid Air Ultimate rear shock. It's 297 Nuke-proof, call this, basically a mixed wheel size, so 29 up front, 27.5 rear, which I love for a downhill bike. It's what most downhill races use as well, although you do have the option, there's a flip chip there if you want to run it full 29, which I don't yet. You've also got loads of adjustability, so you can change the cups on the headset to stretch out or bring the reach back. Same on the chainstay lengths, you can drag the wheelbase out if you want. I've got everything in the middle at the moment, actually. This is probably the best looking bike I think I've ever had. Do you agree? I just think this thing looks amazing. And I love the look of a downhill bike, but just the aesthetics of this bike are brilliant. So that's good enough reason to own this thing in the first place. So why don't they pedal uphill? Well, the gearing for one, you've got a big chainring, you've only got 7 speed on that. So it's quite a big gear, you can't really pedal it. Obviously there's no dropper post and really suspension moves around. They're just so inefficient that, in my opinion, to really get anything out of a downhill bike, you've got to live near somewhere with uplift. But if you don't have uplift facilities, the modern e-bike has been a revelation. It's the main reason I wanted an e-bike. I don't race downhill anymore. I don't go to bike parks or do uplift days that much, but I wanted a bike where I could go out and do repeated downhill laps. My e-bike is a Specialized Kenevo SL. It's a lightweight e-bike, so it doesn't have the power and the battery capacity of a full fat e-bike, but I chose it because I love the way it rides. It's 170mm travel, it's slack, it rides really well downhill. I've set it up actually with mixed wheel size, so I've got 29 front, 27.5 rear, put a coil shock on it. The way it goes downhill is amazing, and obviously I've got the motor to get me back up the hill, and it's kind of as close as I can get to a downhill bike, but it still looks like a trail bike, obviously single crown fork, but it's an e-bike. But e-bikes are for cheating or for old people. Not true, although I am relatively old, and I don't mind cheating if it means not having to push up a hill. But that's what this bike I use for, basically. I turn a hillside into an uplift venue using this bike. They often go for kind of trail rides on it. I know people do this differently. You know, Steve Jones from GMBN kind of uses his e-bike as a trail bike. I have done trail rides on it. I've done 70-kilometre rides on this bike before, but I don't do that very often. It's more about, like I say, getting back up a fire road and then riding a track maybe 2 or 3 times, repeating it, trying to do a better run than last time, and then maybe moving on to a different downhill track. That's what I loved about racing downhill, is repeating the same thing over and over. Maybe it's just me, but I tend to just hit fire roads and get back up. I now ride hillsides on this bike that I haven't done in 15 years because they were just too steep or too much hard work to get back up. But now it's completely fine. And on this bike, I can fit in loads of runs in a short amount of time. Okay, let's tally up the pros and the cons for the e-bike and the downhill bike, starting with how many laps. Well, here at Caersws Bike Park, it's not huge by any means, but it's 150 metres of drop, really fast turnaround as well with the uplift service here. So I came here just the other week, and in 2 hours in the evening, I did 10 laps. And that wasn't kind of rushing around, that was with a bit of a break in between. I know Matt Walker, the pro downhill racer, came here for a day of testing and did 30 runs. That's about 4,500 metres of descending. So a lot, more than you could want if you've got an uplift serviced. On the e-bike, I know from experience with a battery extender, I can get around about 1,000 metres of climbing on this bike. That completely depends on the bike you're riding, the tyres, the weight, the build, how heavy you are. So it's not one set rule, but my battery extender and this bike would probably get me around 7 runs on this hillside. Still probably a couple of hours of riding, which is enough for me, to be fair. But if you're going for out and out metres of descending, the downhill bike's got to win this one. What about the price when it comes to riding these things for the day? So an uplift pass here at Caersws Bike Park is £40 for the day. Dollars and euros up on screen. Bike Park Wales, another popular spot in the UK, is £48 a day. Whistler, it doesn't look like they sell day passes, but a 5-day pass is 390 Canadian dollars, which turns out around to be about 45 British pounds per day. And the cost for riding an e-bike at a bike park, well, it kind of depends. If you're going somewhere like Whistler or Bike Park Wales, anywhere where you're using the uplift service, then it's exactly the same price. However, like Bike Park Wales does have a pedal pass specifically for e-bikes, which is £21 a day. So you can get to ride the downhill trails, you just have to pedal your way up. So cheaper to ride an e-bike if you're pedaling it. However, that's not the only cost. You've got to factor in wear and tear. So tyres, grips. It's going to be fairly similar, other than I would say brake pads. I think you use more of those on the e-bike. However, they're quite cheap, about £20 set of brake pads. But the one big difference is drivetrain. If you're using your e-bike for the uplift, it's quite an expensive thing to replace the drivetrain, so bear that in mind. However, if you're using your own vehicle as a van or whatever for an uplift, then you've got a price setting as well. If you're just using ski lifts and bike parks, you can forget that with the downhill bike. What about practicality? Well, a downhill bike, unless you live near somewhere with an uplift, then they're completely impractical, unless you're racing them and then using them for that all the time. An e-bike, well, that's why I love riding these e-bikes, is they can turn any hillside into a shuttleable downhill playground, so they've got to win on practicality. Okay, let's rate them now on fun and rideability, for the want of a better word. Well, there's a reason why these two bikes have become my favourite ever bikes, and it's because of their angles, their travel. Yes, of course, this Kenevo SL is shorter travel than the downhill bike. It's 170mm, but it's really adjustable. It's got really similar angles. You can actually get this as slack as 62.5 degree head angle with the cups in there. Descent carbon is 63, so super similar. Even the weights aren't crazy. Actually, the downhill bike is about 2 kilograms lighter. Obviously, it doesn't have the battery and the motor, but the way they ride is really similar. However, if I was going for all-out fun, the downhill bike has got to be the one for me. I love the downhill bike. I would pick that if I could only have one. I just love this thing. It's so much fun to ride really fast. But I guess it's the practicality thing that sways me back to the e-bike. With this, I've got to have thought ahead and booked my uplift day. With this, at the drop out, I can think, oh, is it charged? I'll go out and I'll do some downhill runs. So in conclusion, what would I choose? Of course, this is all just my opinion. You let me know what you think down below. Obviously, I'm in a super lucky position where I have the ability to ride both. We have some brilliant partners that supply us with bikes so I can ride it. Don't forget as well, I've done the videos in the past on cheaper downhill bikes. You can get yourself some bargains out there if you're looking a little bit older. If it's going to be your second bike, you don't want to be too frivolous about spending loads of money on a bike that you're not going to ride very much. Get yourself an older second-hand downhill bike. They can be brilliant for those uplift days. And maybe keep something like this for your everyday bike.